Thank you very much, Professor Lloyd Weeks, and my thanks also extend to Dr. Khaled Douglas. I appreciate the opportunity to be a presenter in this lecture series, and I hope that your audience find this talk informative and supportive of any interest in the archaeology and rock art research in Saudi Arabia. This talk is not going to be too academic, actually, so there might be a number of areas into the study and research of rock art that I will not be indulging in, so that more audience can follow up with all the general information that one will be presenting to them about the rock art of Saudi Arabia and Arabia in general. Of course, some of the basic things one has to really lay in front of everyone is that really rock art sites, as has been found out by the recent archaeological research and surveys that has been done since the 1970s by the Department of Antiquities in Saudi Arabia and other countries in the Arabian Peninsula. Hundreds of rock art sites have been recorded and became known to so many, but most recently more research and more public interest, to be honest, more public interest into rock art, and we find so many archaeology enthusiasts who would wander around in the deserts and the mountains and valleys and so on, looking for archaeological sites and in particular rock art, and sharing their photography with the rest of the people, and trying to learn more about it from experts and specialists. And I found that actually this is one of the positive things that have been happening in regard to social interaction with the public, and not to be restricted to academia and so on. Henceforth, one would say that this talk has actually been mainly based on the input from enthusiasts especially on the Twitter front, and I have mentioned all the people that I have taken images from their accounts and so on, and this is really to show the variety. I mean, tackling such a huge topic like rock art in Arabia is really a big undertaking. Hence, one has to really be very careful not to focus on a certain geographical region and leave the others, although I would say that I'm a little bit biased in regard to my presentation today, and probably from all the knowledge and all the resources available about rock art in Arabia and so on, the majority of archaeological sites have been focused on those in Saudi, with a little bit of indication for other sites in Yemen, Oman, and the Emirates, and so on. The role and the efforts of research projects undertaken in Saudi Arabia, in particular, and other parts of Arabia, have really been very supportive of recording more and more archaeological sites, including rock art sites. This has been an advantage for all of us to learn more about the history, the cultural history, the archaeology, also the various parts of politics, commerce, migration, and pilgrimage, Islamic and pre-Islamic, and so on, from what has been found along the routes of travelers from one point to another. Rock art, in the early days, people would think of it as something that has been just, as a fun activity that people might be wasting time or trying their artistic capabilities on the rocks and trying to see how, how good their art is and so on. But once one really studies it and look into the variety images and a variety of themes that have been put on these on these rocks or mountains or wadis and so on, one would realize that these are actually an actual recording of the human past, an actual recording of the activities people used to do and undertake in their daily life, whether it's hunting, whether it's seeing different varieties of wildlife, whether they are recording some activities or some social interaction between different groups, different tribes, and so on, or probably other issues that would reflect various parts of the social life in Arabia. The cultural landscape is so varied and so wide. Once one sees the topography and geology of the Arabian Peninsula, one can say every other mountain, every other rock would have some evidence of rock art, whether it's late or whether it's early, and so on. And this is really a major, what makes Arabia one of the major rock art regions in the world, counted by specialists like so many, I can't name a few, but counted as the fourth largest region of rock art in the world, which is really understandable when one sees the variety of rock art sites and so on. And on top of that, there are lots of these sites that have multiple or had multiple occupation or multiple engravings that dates to different periods. So this is really a very reflective of the role of culture in Arabian landscape, and the whether it's in the desert, whether it's in mountain, whether it's higher mountains, whether it's in caves, or whether it's in the deserts or the harrats and so on. And nothing could have stopped people from being wandering around these areas, or maybe settling there for a period of time, and also recording their parts of their experiences and parts of their memories that uh, give us more idea about what was life at the time. Of course, also dating a lot of archaeological sites in general have helped us really to understand the extent of the human habitation of Arabia and the human presence in Arabia through time. And with the efforts of so many projects in Arabia, I think that has reflected very well and gave us a better understanding of the archaeology of the region, of the of the past human culture, and also the various periods that these archaeological sites belong to. We found there has been a lot of architectural, technological, artistic, and many other activities that human populations have left from the past that really indicate the extensive human presence through time. We can see from the various panels that one would find in various parts of Arabia that there are some evidence of extinct types of animals that are no longer present in Arabia, and this is also an indication of the environmental change that has happened and probably led to the extinction of certain types of animals. But on top of that, we can find that the human touch in making these engravings, and also making all these stylistic and artistic approaches that the artist did to these animals to really show us the relationship, either the close relationship or the importance, or probably something related to the religious aspects, or that may have been prevalent in certain periods and certain times, and so on. Also, we can see the variation and the stylistic way of really engraving these animals and showing certain parts, and really this sort of activities, or this rock art excellence is not really an indication of people passing by or people sitting in a certain cave or under a certain rock for the until the afternoon sun become cooler, and then move on. These people have been around and really watching all the wildlife that has been in the area around them, and really putting a lot of effort into really making this record of these animals. Here we can see that the first image is from Tabuk, this in the northwest, and the second image is from Najran, where we find two horsemen facing each other, whether they are fighting or whether they are orchestrating some form of foul play and so on. But also we can see also again the way that the horses have been represented as slim and very sporty, and all the dotting around these horses and their riders and so on. All of that is really, sometimes we can see it as an indication of artistic appreciation of the art that has been done. But at the same time, it may have, or it may reflect certain social, political, economic, or even religious meanings to indicate what these people do, and why they are doing it in such a way, and why in some other panels we don't find and see the same thing, where we see the various dotted engravings around the horses and the horsemen. This is another panel also that shows really an unusual an unusual person with a feather on top of his head, and with his leather carrier bag, and also he has his bow and arrow with him, and there is also a sword that has not been drawn here as well. So all this armament that this person is carrying and the way he is dressing and so on, is it also may have some indication of the social position of this person. It's a rare panel that has nothing similar has been found that looks similar to this one, but this is all indication that these people have been living in these sites, the rock art sites, and their archaeology is bounding around, whether it's late prehistory or maybe early civilization time. But the indication here is showing us really the variety of personnel that and the variety of experiences the artists have seen. We can see here two ostriches from two panels that look completely different. In one panel on the right one, we can see that it has been realistic motif that has been done, and the bird is trying to fly or trying to flee its location and so on. On the other one, we can see it as a more artistic and stylistically very symbolic in a certain way. And this is from the Medina region. Here we can see also the horses, the Arabian horse, with all its glory and all its grandeur, and to the extent that even the horseman, the rider, is engraved in a smaller size than the horse itself. Is this an indication of the importance of the horse and the value of the horse to the ancient people of Arabia? That's probably so, and there are so many similar drawings where the horseman is very small and in comparison to the horse itself. So this is really a very significant indication about the affection the Arabs have for their horses and the value. And this is one of the ancient old indications that one can really conclude from this image. Also, we can find that also wild ass as has been found in the site of Shuwaimis, which is one of the most important early Neolithic sites that has been studied extensively by the Paleo Desert Project. And my colleague Maria Guanin was a leading researcher on the rock art there. And it's one of the UNESCO World Heritage Sites along with the Jubba site in Hail region. So this is, here we can find also the artistic quality of the panel, whereby some of the engraving is really done at different degrees to the head of the animal and the rest of the animal, and that goes along with a lot of other panels in the site itself. Here we can see cattle from the Tabuk region, which is also really one of the wonderful regions. One can see a lot of variety and a lot of extinct animals that have been no longer available or no longer present in Arabia. And we can see all of this square engravings in the body of the animal, and the horns, how they are going sideways in a sort of curvy way. All of these touches by the ancient artist is really an indication of some affection to these animals, whether it's as food, animals for food, or animals for herding, and so on. So all of these panels really give us, we can learn a lot of information about them, and give us also information about the correlation or the relationship between the artist or the people and the wildlife present in the nearby regions. Here we can see also a different representation of cattle, and you can see the extinct animal and the horns going forward, and all of these geometric designs on the body of the animal itself and around the animal in this like hollowed round circles, and the play with the patina of the rock, whereby the patina or the darker surface of the rock is not completely erased or removed, but the artist was capable of really playing with the patina so that it gives the look and the impression and the significance they want to give to this engraving and this animal. To what extent is this related to artistic or religious rites that ancient people may have been practicing with these animals? This is something, it's really one of the difficult issues that rock art specialists are sometimes hesitant not to really jump into conclusions before a thorough study of the meaning of such designs on the animal bodies. Here another type of extinct sheep that has been also engraved on some of the rock panels, and we can notice that the way that it was shown, and it doesn't have any herder that is standing by and so on. Would that be indication if it's wild or if it is domestic? This is more, more to be done to really achieve an understanding. This panel here, we can see on the left, bottom left, we can see some of maybe a goat and probably dog or canine. But again, the whole patina of the rock, the darker part of the stone, or the top shell of the stone itself, has been completely removed, except for those that showing the actual animals that the artist wanted to really highlight and present. And this is one of the rare panels that one have seen from Southwest Saudi Arabia. Again, more action and activities, horsemen and horsemen with their long spears fighting with each other, and people are in the heat of the battle between the various parties and so on. And this is really one common scene that has been also repeated by the Arabic literature and the stories from pre-Islamic times, and the competitive nature of life in pre-Islamic Arabia, and how different tribes has been sort of fighting over the resources, over water wells, and so on and so forth. So this is really a reflection of the social life of the people of Arabia in the past. Most of the early art that has been found, early rock art that has been found in Arabia, has been studied by the Bali Deserts team, headed by Michael Petraglia, myself, Hugh Brookhart, and many other colleagues, and Marie Guanin, as I mentioned a while ago. And the sites of Jubba and Shuwaimis proved to be one of the earliest rock art sites in Arabia. I should mention also my former student, Dr. Sarah Dosari. Also, she done her master's and PhD on the site of Jubba itself, and her conclusions went along very well with the Bali Deserts project's conclusions as well. And she took part in some of our field work as well. We find that these sites, and especially the site of Jubba, has actually a style named after it, the Jubba style, whereby the early herders and hunters in Jubba, with their slim, long bodies and their cattle and bows and arrows and so on. All of that is really some of the earliest rock art. And I hope that these photos are clear to the audience. But here we can see a lot of many men, and sometimes with their dogs, helping with the hunt of wild animals. Here we can see sometimes they are hunting animals and carrying them to their camps, as you can see by the drawing below. The other project I would like to the other site I would like to shed light on is the camel site, which is really one of the unique sites in the Arabian Peninsula, as it has one of the rarest bas relief or high relief rock art in Arabia, with the life-size camels and other animals. And this site has been studied many years back by Guillaume Charlot, and later a project by Guillaume, Maria, and myself started a few years back. And this is some of the findings of the team. Here we can see the topography of the site, whereby a number of rocky Inselbergs that has been manifested, and some of the, as you can see, this is the actual aerial photo, and some of these rock faces have clear indications of camel engraving and camels in their full size. You can see the legs of the camels and forearms of the camels here, and the body. Some of the condition of the site itself is a little bit difficult in terms of conservation and so on, and it needs a lot of care and attention, as has been done by the team and the support of the Heritage Commission as well in this regard. There are so many panels that have been eroded, suffered collapse, and however, there are clear indications that this site is of an early age, as some dating will soon be published about the site itself. But the significance of and the uniqueness of this site gives it really a high level of importance. Just a short or a small touch on the archaeology outside of Saudi Arabia itself. We can see here some images and drawings from rock art panels from Oman. Top left is by Angelo Fossati in the Mediterranean Archaeology and Archaeometry Journal. And we can see a lot of variation in terms of wildlife, in terms of weapons, in terms of ships that have been sailed, and all of the social activities and that have been undertaken by people in that part of Arabia. Below we can see a hunter with his bow and arrow and his sword in his waist. Excuse me. Also in Sharjah, we have found there are some many rock art sites, largely engravings showing people and animal. In Yemen also, this is just one image from a project I have worked with my colleague, Professor Abdullah al-Ma'mari from Yemen, on the site of Wadi Dhahar. And here we can see a she-camel milking its baby camel. And the site is really full of panels that reflect a lot of aspects of past life in early Yemen. There are exceptional rock art sites in Arabia, really, and one of them is in the area or in the Wadi of Wadi Danan in Al-Ula. And this stretch of images and the panel is so big, and it's also not only so big, but also it is so high. One has to climb to reach up to this panel, and it's really going across the face of the Jebel itself. So it's different parts and so on, and we can see that there are lots of animals, and in particular ostriches. And this is really amazing. Why is the need to draw or to engrave all of these ostriches in this place? What is the indication? And also the various styles of engraving. What would be the indication of the variety of styles that have been used to engrave all of these ostriches in taking a square shape or taking oval shape and so on. All of these indications are quite interesting and deserve more focused research. Also, we can see that there are also what looks like marks engraved on the face of the panel, probably at a later date, but also this is quite interesting. This is one of the rarest items or household items that has been engraved on this panel, which is quite interesting. This is a closer look at the scores of ostriches that have been engraved on this larger panel. This is the mat on the top here, and we can see that there is a similar one, whether it's a mat or whether it's some cloth that is put on the camel back or the horse back and so on. But this is something similar that has been shown by Mr. Abbas Al-Isa, who has tweeted this image. Here we can see another part of this long and large panel in Wadi Danan. We can see also some geometric shapes with bulls with their big horns, and there is a triangle on top of their heads. The indication or the importance of the bull in ancient Arabia in terms of religious rites and so on is also a very important aspect, but actually this panel does not seem to have contemporary ancient writing that goes along with these animals. So this is really an indication, probably this is irrelevant to certain cultural horizons, or probably it may have predated writing in the region. Now, these are quite interesting pots, or the quite interesting amphora-like items that are engraved on the panel itself. This is quite interesting. Probably this is used regularly for collecting water from wells around the area and so on. But what is the indication, or what is the meaning behind engraving such a water vessel onto a rock face? Quite interesting. Of course, symbolism, and either by itself or in the shape of geometric designs, have always been piece and parcel of rock art studies everywhere in the world. So we do find indications or evidence of a lot of geometric shapes, circular shapes, round shapes, long shapes, all of these types of shapes that one can see. Their indication and their meaning and their actual relevance to people in the past. Are they sort of indication of a location? Are they indication of a certain rite that has been done in a certain part of the landscape? All of these things are sometimes difficult to grasp and be certain about. Some of these geometric designs may be an indication for water sources and so on. More and more of these cupulas. I'm not showing any cupulas here, which are the sort of the round holes into the rocks, but they are so abundant in many parts of Arabia, and still an enigma for so many researchers. Also, the engravings of hands and arms, which has been found in various parts of Arabia, is also has some sort of significance in terms of either it's religious, or either it's safety related, or wishes, or good wishes, and so on. This is one of the, or maybe sometimes we have a group of hands and probably faces come together on one panel, which may be also a possible indication of a peace treaty or an agreement between certain people. All of these things are really quite interesting when it comes to the study of rock art. Footprints or engraved feet, as you can see on the top left side of the screen, is also a common feature of a common feature of rock art in Arabia, and it's difficult to go into their interpretation and meaning. However, it's part of the cultural perspective that we can collect on the people of a certain area or a certain archaeological site. Now, also, one of the most interesting and intriguing rock art panels are those where we find anthropomorphic figures, human figures that goes up to about 3 meters, 2.5 meters, and so on. Even beyond, it's just beyond even our the regular height of human beings. And even sometimes it's very difficult to figure out whether it's a male or female figure that we are seeing. The hair is no longer an indication of how you can distinguish, since hair has been a habit of people in the past to have long hair or braided hair and so on. So all of these things, at the same time, women would be also or known to have used weapons, bows and arrows, spears, swords, and daggers, and so on. So it's very difficult, really, sometimes to really figure out all of the sexual orientation of these figures. The usual indication is that they are male figures, but sometimes one wonder if that can be the case for all the images or all the engravings on these panels. Sometimes we come across certain images or certain engravings that have certain unique style, whereby we can see like these lines on the sides of the body. Is this an indication of clothes? Is it an indication of certain dresses? A lot of things are sometimes difficult to be certain about. But however, this is relevant to traditions that have been taken up by these people through time. Here we can see also on the top right of the screen, we can see also different representation of human images. One may even goes beyond that and say, could this be representation of deities in human forms or anything like that? But without the really, without the evidence that can support any assumptions of this sort, it's very difficult to just throw them on the table like that. We can see here two images. The shape of the body of these persons may have an indication of the sex type of the person, whether it's female or male. But again, one has to be cautious about really how to go about these images and so on. And whether also the other thing, or the person on the left here, there is like a big bump on the front of the person itself. Could that be an indication of pregnancy as well, or maybe something else, obesity? Anyhow, it's one of those things that really makes one wonder really what could be the meaning or the indication of such varieties and such abnormalities, so to speak. Here again, also we can see that many images also in various parts of Arabia, the face or the head of the person is very stylistically limited to sometimes a line or a small oval shape and so on, without any indication of the actual face or the eyes or the mouth or the nose and so on. And this is quite prevalent, including that of person in the Juba style. This is quite an interesting and unique image on the top left of the screen, whereby we can see definitely what looks like a human face, but very long neck. Very long neck, really, very short hands, and probably very short legs on the sides and so on. But what is going on in the midsection, in the body of this person? What could be the indication? Could that be, I mean, there is like, the image is almost like the same on the two sides of the body itself. Is this an indication of a pregnancy? Is this an indication of something like that? It's very difficult really to be certain, but sometimes this is what jumps to mind when one really looks at this from the first for the first time. Of course, there are complex undertakings for the ancient artists who engraved on these panels, rock panels. Sometimes these rocks give them a hard time, a lot of hard time, because the rocks are not easy really to engrave. Sometimes the experience is limited. Sometimes the type of rock is really not helping really to smoothen the surface so that the image wanted or needed to be engraved would look in its best appearance. So we can see here in both these two images whereby either there is difficulty in really showing the actual animals that have been drawn, or at the same time, as we can see on the image on the right of the screen, the whole panel is really filled with a lot of engraving, a lot of writing, and so on. So there is a dense and compact panel here that really, for some reason, it has attracted the attention of people in the past to really come and draw and not look for another rock, whether it's for easy of access, whether for its the importance is the bull that we see on the panel here does it have any sort of religious indication, maybe a deity or something, and that's what really made this rock preferred over other rocks. This is one of the challenges. Here again, we can see in the image in the middle of the screen, a lot of images have been done over each other. A lot of images have been engraved on top of each other and so on. This is quite interesting in so many panels that we find and see in many parts of Arabia. The focus on certain locations within a particular mountain or a particular rock and so on. Sometimes we find the back side of the rock, maybe the left or right side of the rock itself is almost near empty of any engravings or any activities, but the front one is really the one that is taking attention. This is quite significant because it may have a certain reason, or could it be just for wanting of attention of people passing through this place or sitting in that place that they want them to see their work or their images, but this would not happen if it is on the back of the rock and so on. Hunting is a very sort of common activity in Arabia, even until recent decade, until recent, the past few centuries. And whereby everything was hunted. Here we can see the hunter is using his bow and arrow and sitting on his knees to catch these ostriches. And this is quite interesting because all of that is an indication of the techniques. All of these birds are very fast and very attentive to any sound and noise or smell and so on. So the artist is really portraying to us how the hunters are, or the hunters using certain techniques in order to not to get the attention of these birds, and hopefully that they would be able to catch them. Also, we can see on the top right image here, the camel man is actually following an ostrich and trying to hunt it. And this is quite interesting, using the camel to track the ostriches and try to hunt them. Also, wild camel is also very common and very well known. We can see here a horseman with his long spear, with the the spear's head is so big, and the wild camel is running. There are two horsemen with two camels, and the horsemen are in pursuit of these wild camels. This is quite interesting because uh, wild camel was hunted and eaten and so on. So this is a very interesting indication. Here we can see on the lower right uh, image or photo, we can see that the hunter, the horseman with his long spear, is pointing at an earlier engraving from a different time period, maybe a few decades, a few centuries earlier, and but they are just showing the activity. It's like some people they would use their rifles in the desert and so on hit. To hit maybe a rock or a tree, or maybe unfortunately a rock art panel, as some may have done in so many places. So this is quite interesting, the whole idea of using the spear towards uh, uh, an animal that was centuries earlier portrayed on the rock. Sometimes even you have to face a lion with your sword and your sword in order to defend yourself, or maybe to attack it. This is quite interesting, and also one of the rare occurrences that one would be facing a lion with a sword. We can see the lion is really jumping at the person with all his long claws and open mouth, trying to beat him and probably eat him. We can also find in the rock art of Arabia indication of the correlation or the relationship with the animals, whereby sometimes the markings on these animals have been put, as we can see here on the camel itself, and we can see here on the sheep, whereby certain marks were put on some of these animals. And this is quite interesting because this is a long-lived and still lived tradition of really marking your animals, and it's the only secure way of really for the ancient people to really to recognize and identify their animals, and instead of really there is a quarrel over this is my animal, this is not your animal, etc., etc. The markings would be the official indication of the ownership of this particular animal. The elephants are quite an interesting part of Arabian rock art, where many images have been found in various parts, especially in the southwest. And this is quite interesting with the story of Abraha attempt to demolish the Kaaba in pre-Islamic times and so on, and whether this is just related to that particular historical incident, or this is more of a common thing and evidence of either trade and so on with East Africa needs to be thoroughly looked at. Sometimes it can be so, some of these images and some of the engraving can be so stylistically simple and straightforward. We can see this camel, this she camel, how it was portrayed with just, lines, and the back of the camel is in the shape of a triangle. This is quite interesting geometric representation of the camel itself. We can see here more of more cattle and so on from the site of Shuwaimis, and the full engraving of the body of the animals and so on. Although this is quite an early age rock art site, this shows really the interest and importance of the rock art as a record or memory of some of the activities that have been taking place in those parts of Arabia. This is another interesting bas relief panel, whereby all the area where the elements have been engraved is all the area around it has been cleared from the patina, but we can find that the animal and the hunter behind it, the hunters behind them are just in their patina. This is quite an interesting and a rare occurrence in terms of engraving techniques. Sometimes there are so many, some panels that are so huge, so big, so much details have been found in them, and they have been engraved across millennia and centuries old, and all of the images have been sometimes engraved over each other. And one of the rare things that can be found on some of the panels is really to find a herding image for a herder and his goats, as we can see on the right side. And this is just one element of the social life or the economic life of early Arabians that one can really learn about from the study of rock art. Here we can see one of the images. We can see on the right one of the images for a person holding with his right hand a certain club, what looks like a club, maybe a wooden club even. And we can see here in the center of the screen, the second panel, the bigger panel, we can see a goat, wild animal, and also we can see the club drawn by itself over here as the woman. And this has been, or this type of weapon has been found sometimes drawn by itself in many occasions. So this is quite interesting. Of course, the usual weapons like swords, like bow and arrows, spears, and so on are so common and known to many, but the use of clubs like these ones are quite a rare occurrence. Here we can see these two men, what looks like two men, holding with their hands a curved instrument. Unfortunately, the image does not give it justice to show us a close look at it, a closer look at the instrument. Some try to link the instrument to instruments in other parts of in the region and so on, but it's quite unlikely in my opinion. This is quite an interesting slide I'm showing to you here, whereby this image we can see two people. They are sort of on the move, and we can see that the person on the right has an enlarged abdomen, most likely an indication of pregnancy. The front or the person on the left is probably a male walking along. This is quite interesting to indicate, this is one of the rarest panels whereby a pregnant woman. Women usually are quite rare to show on rock art. I mean, when you compare the number of men, the definitely looking men on rock art and the definitely looking women on rock art, I mean, men would be outnumbering women by tens of times. But showing this woman, what looks like a pregnant woman here, is quite an interesting panel that deserves further study. On the other hand, we can see this horizontally engraved engraving on the surface of a certain rock that may also be an indication of a person that is laid to the ground as if he is in the state of death or as a dead person. Of course, this is just a suggestive point, and it's not an interpretation of the image. Unfortunately, the whole panel on the left has been destroyed. But anyhow, so this is one of the things that one really can notice in terms of the variety of the rock art that is found in various parts of Arabia. Now, I have left painted panels until almost nearly the end. This is really just an indication of how prevalent engraved panels compared to painted panels. Unfortunately, there are many painted panels that have been affected by the weather and also the exposure to the elements and to sunlight and so on. The majority of those panels that have survived, the majority of painted panels that survived the elements and human intervention and so on, are those in the mountains, like in the southwest. The two images on the top are from Riyadh, Jabal Shagra mountain in the southwest, very high up in the mountain, very hard to reach. And there are so many painted panels in the area, so huge and so varied, with lots of types of animals, wild animals, and so on. The panels below are also quite interesting from Hail and Tabuk region. On the left, from Al Musamma site, which is quite interesting, and we can see that the rock art is not really so common. We can see a lot of geometric shapes and designs, rectangle and so on. Do they indicate habitational quarters, tents, fields for agriculture and so on? This deserves more intense and detailed study later on. Now we can look finally at human intervention into rock art sites. Unfortunately, rock art sites, like every other type of archaeological site, may suffer simple damage, as we can see here. The horns of the bull here have been connected. Probably this is to indicate a certain religious relevance and so on. It's a recent intervention. Or we can see here the engraving of a camel on top of an earlier image. We can see here this was only 50 years ago, and it's published by Bednarik and Khan. And we can see that 50 years ago, the camel was not engraved on the panel, and after that, it has been 50 years ago, apparently, or less, this camel was engraved on top of this. We can see here other indications of recent human intervention. At least this is not really damaging any rock art site. This is a car with a person driving inside it and so on. Here, this is quite interesting and conflicting image that I am sort of taking or making a strong reservation about its authenticity. Probably some parts of the sort of outline of the animals drawn here or engraved here could be authentic. But all the sort of seriation or the lining or the lines that have been put through, or the small circles, also the defacing of the face and the adding of long teeth and adding so many things into it is really apparently is a recent human intervention trying to imitate certain regional influences. Again, we see on the panel on the left, we can see authentic engraving and authentic scenery where the person with the sword or with the stick and the camels and so on, but all around it we find quite funny, almost cartoonist shapes of animals in a sort of interactive way that really quite unusual and indicates or highly indicates a recent human intervention trying to imitate rock art. We can see the camel on the bottom camel on the left. We can see somebody has been trying to to engrave a second neck and head next to it. If you can notice it here where I'm indicating by the arrow, just a double sort of almost like a double neck and head for the camel, and this really could strengthen the thought of human intervention on that. Here, unfortunately, one of the panels that have been badly damaged using red paint and so on, but I believe the authorities have taken care of that and cleaned it up. In conclusion, a lot of work has been done in regard to rock art research in Arabia, and the technique used and the capabilities and the scholarship that have been prevalent has been really very advantageous to rock art research in Arabia. Rock art has been receiving a lot of interest from local communities and interested and enthusiastic people from the area. Sometimes they are people who are local people, the people next to these rock art sites and so on. All of them, we can find that they are really taking good care of these sites and reporting them to the authorities, which is really a very good indication of the education and the social outreach of the authorities towards the local communities. Academically, luckily, also rock art has received more interest in academic circles, and we have more rock art specialists with master and PhD degrees over the past decade or two, which is really a good indication and follow-up of further research into rock art of Arabia, as well as the efforts of our colleagues from abroad who have been taking up research in Arabia jointly, and this has been really a great collaboration effort under the supervision of the authorities. Of course, laws have also been strengthened to really protect the archaeological sites in general and rock art sites, which is really a very important aspect really to restrict any damage to rock art sites and to give a chance to researchers to do more work on these sites. Finally, I thank everyone for really attending this talk and to listening to it, and I appreciate again the efforts of the organizers and Professor Lloyd and Khaled. All thanks and appreciation and regards for the Minister of Culture and the CEO of the Heritage Commission. The rest of the thank to everyone who have taken care of rock art sites, my colleagues, my friends, my students, and all the local communities all around Arabia. And I conclude my talk hoping that you have found it useful and informative. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much indeed, Dr. Alsharekh, for that fantastic presentation. Normally at this point in the lecture, we would ask for Khaled to do a short Arabic summary of the presentation, but obviously in this case, you're very capable of doing that yourself, and you've included a lot of Arabic text on your slides. but I wonder if we might ask you for just a short summary in a few minutes of some of the major points that you made in your presentation.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
الفن الصخري في الجزيرة العربية الحقيقة يعد من أهم المواقع الأثرية المعروفة في أنحاء متعددة، طبيعة وجيولوجية الجزيرة العربية بشكل عام نجد أنه في كثير من المواقع وكثير من المناطق في أنحاء الجزيرة العربية حيث توجد الصخور وتوجد الأودية، نجد أنه توجد الكثير من الفنون الصخرية والواجهات الصخرية المنتشرة في أنحاء، واللي تعود لفترات زمنية متعددة تعكس حياة المجتمعات البشرية اللي كانت موجودة في الماضي. الفن الصخري طبعا حظي بكثير من الدعم والمساندة والاهتمام في السنوات الأخيرة. هناك الكثير من الفرق العلمية اللي أتت للعمل ودراسة مواقع الفن الصخري وتوثيقه والتعرف على الفترات الزمنية التي يعود إليها، وكذلك الدلالات الحضارية التي يمكن أننا نستفيد منها من خلال دراستنا للفن الصخري. هناك العديد من المواقع ذات الأهمية العالية واللي لقيت الاهتمام الرسمي، ومن ذلك طبعا تسجيل موقعي جبة وشويمس ضمن لائحة التراث العالمي، وهذا الحقيقة جهد كبير قامت فيه الجهات الرسمية لتوثيق هذين الموقعين والمحافظة عليها واتخاذ كافة الإجراءات اللازمة للاهتمام بها وحمايتها وإعداد الدراسات حولها. هناك العديد من المواقع المنتشرة في أنحاء الجزيرة العربية التي تحوي الفن الصخري والذي يعطينا معلومات متنوعة ومختلفة ودلالات متعددة حسب الفنون اللي يتم العثور عليها. هناك أشياء لها ارتباط بالحياة الرعي، الحياة البرية، حياة الصيد، حياة القتال وتداخل بين الجماعات البشرية اللي قد يحدث هناك في مناطق متعددة. أحيانا الأساليب تنفيذ الفن الصخري تكون متعددة ومتنوعة بشكل كبير، وهذه حقيقة يعني دلالة على أنه الفن الصخري ليس مجرد يعني فنون عابرة يمر الشخص أو الأشخاص في مكان ما ويقومون بالنحت وثم مغادرته، ولكن هناك جهد كبير ومركز، ويمكن أن نعتبره عبارة عن قراءة لما يدور في ذهن الإنسان أو ما يعيشه في حياته اليومية أو يعكس بعض الأفكار اللي ترد في ذهنه. وهذا من الأشياء اللي تستحق الاهتمام وتبين لنا أهمية الفن الصخري. أيضا الفن الصخري يعطينا دلالات تخص يعني الرجل والمرأة وحياتهم الاجتماعية. أحيانا بعض الأشكال تكون يعني تنحت بأحجام كبيرة ومتنوعة ومختلفة. كل هذه لها علاقة بالمجتمع، العادات، التقاليد، ربما حتى المعتقدات الدينية إلى آخره. هناك الكثير من الأشكال والرموز والأشكال الهندسية اللي قد يكون لها دلالات معينة تدل على أماكن، تدل على نشاط معين إلى آخره. طبعا حماية الفن الصخري مسؤولية الجميع والاهتمام بها مسؤولية الجميع، وجهود الكثيرين من المهتمين وأبناء المنطقة اللي توجد فيها مواقع الفن الصخري كانوا هم خير داعمين لحماية هذه المواقع والإبلاغ عنها. والجهات الرسمية قامت بدور كبير أيضا بالمقابل في الحرص على وجود الأنظمة والدعم والمساندة والمكافآت لمن يبلغ عن المواقع جديدة إلى آخره. فهذا الحقيقة يعني تطور كبير. في الجانب الأكاديمي الجامعات بدأت تهتم بدراسات الفن الصخري، وهناك الكثير من خريجي الماجستير وخريجات الماجستير والدكتوراه الذين درسوا الفن الصخري وتخصصوا فيه، والمجال رحب وواسع لمزيد من الدراسات والأبحاث بالتعاون مع الفرق العلمية من الجامعات والمراكز البحثية العالمية. أعتقد هذا خلاصة يعني خلاصة موجزة جدا حول ما تطرقت له هذه المحاضرة، وشكرا. Okay, it's yours, Lloyd.
Okay, thank you very much indeed for that short summary in Arabic, Dr. Alsharekh. I'll just stop the recording now and we can go to question time.